King Arthur's Knights, Chapter 6, Part 5. Then the two others leaped toward him, but the blows of the bar and club he caught upon his shield, and slew the troll with the club. Ere Sir Geraint could draw his sword back from this blow, he felt his horse fall under him, for the dwarf with the iron bar had with one blow broken the beast's back. Quickly avoiding the horse, Sir Geraint dashed at the dwarf, who ran toward the hole in the hill. But ere he could reach it, Sir Geraint gave him a blow on the crown of his head so fierce and hard that the skull was split to the shoulders. So then Sir Geraint turned and walked slowly down the hill, for he was dazed, and his old wounds had broken afresh. But he came to where Enid stood comforting the damsel mourning over the dead knight, and when he was there, straightway he fell down, lifeless. Enid shrieked with the anguish of the thought that he was dead, and came and knelt beside him, and undid his helm, and kissed him many times. And the sound of her wailing reached an earl named Madoc, who was passing with a company along the road from a plundering expedition. And he came and took up Geraint and the dead knight, and laid them in the hollow of their shields, and with the damsels took them to his castle a mile along the road. Now the earl was a tyrant and a robber, and had done much evil on the borderlands of Geraint, in burning, plundering, and slaying, since he had learned that Geraint was become soft and foolish. And he had recognized Sir Geraint while he lay in the swoon, and rejoiced that now he was like to die. As he rode along, he thought that if he could prevail upon the Lady Enid to wed him, he might get much land with her, as the widow of the dead Sir Geraint, future king of Cornwall. And he determined to make her marry him. When therefore he and his host had reached his castle, he ordered the dead knight to be buried, but Sir Geraint he commanded to be laid on his shield on a litter couch in front of the high table in the hall. So that Sir Geraint should die, he commanded that no leech should be sent for. While his knights and men-at-arms sat down to dine, Earl Madoc came to Enid and begged her to make good cheer. But thinking to gain more from secrecy, he did not tell her that he knew who she was, nor did he show her that he knew who was her lord. "Take off thy travelling clothes, fair lady," he said, "and weep not for this dead knight." "I will not," she said, and hung over Geraint, chafing his hands and looking earnestly into his pallid face. "Ah, lady," the earl said, "be not so sorrowful, for he is now dead, and therefore ye need no longer mourn. But as ye are beautiful, I would wed thee, and thou shalt have this earldom and myself, and much wealth, and all these men to serve thee. I tell you, I would rather die with my dear lord, if indeed he be dead," cried Enid, "than live in wealth with you or anyone." "Come then," said the earl, "and at least take food with me." "Nay, I will not," said Enid, "and never more will I eat or be joyful in life." "But by heaven thou shalt," said Madoc, furious at her resistance to his will. And he drew her from beside the litter and forced her to come to the table where his knights sat eating, and commanded her to eat. "I will not eat," she cried, straining from his hold toward where Geraint lay, "unless my dear lord shall eat also." "But he is dead already, thou mad woman," cried the earl. "Drink this goblet of wine," he commanded, "and thou wilt change thy mind." "I will not drink again until my dear lord drink also," said Enid, and strove to free herself from the grasp of the earl. "Now, by heaven," said Madoc wrathfully, "I have tried gentle means with thee. Let this teach thee that I am not to be balked of my own will." And with that he gave her a violent blow on the ear, and tried to drag her away out of the hall. And Enid shrieked and wept and cried for help, but none of the knights that sat there dared to oppose their lord. But suddenly men started up from their seats in terror to see the corpse of Geraint rise from the hollow of the shield. Enid's cries had roused him from his swoon, and his hand, as he raised himself, felt the hilt of the sword beside him. He leaped from the litter, and drawing his sword, he ran toward the earl, who by now had almost dragged Enid to the door. Raising the sword, Geraint struck him with so fierce a blow that he cleft his head in twain. Then, for terror at seeing what they thought was a dead man rise up to slay them, the knights ran from the hall and left Geraint and Enid alone. Enid threw her arms about Geraint, her face bright with happiness. My dear lord, I thank God thou art not dead, as this man said thou wert, and I pray thy forgiveness for doubting that thou hadst forgotten thy manhood, for of a truth none is so brave, so good as thou art. Geraint kissed his wife, smiling wanly the while. Sorry I am, my dear wife, he said, that I was swooning when thou hadst need of me. And as for any doubts thou hadst of me, why, let us both forget them from this time forth. And now we must away, ere this lord's men recover their fright and pursue us. Enid led him instantly to the stalls where she had seen the horses had been led, and Geraint took the spear and the horse of the knight whom the trolls had slain, and when he had mounted, he took up Enid from the ground and placed her before him. Thus they rode out of the castle and away as rapidly as they could, and now that they were reconciled, much joyful and loving talk was between them. But night was coming on, and Geraint was weak from his wounds and loss of blood, and Enid was full of trouble for the pain her husband suffered. She prayed fervently that soon they might reach a town where she could obtain help for him. Suddenly she heard far away in the distance the tramp of horses, and Enid could have wept for sorrow. But she kept her face calm, though her lips trembled. Geraint also heard the beat of the hoofs, and turning in his saddle he looked up, and saw on the skyline of the narrow road the glint of spears between them and the sky. Dear wife, he said with a faint brave smile, I hear someone following us. I will put thee in hiding behind this thicket, and should they slay me, do thou make thy way homeward to my father Erben, and bid him avenge my death. Oh, my dear Geraint, said Enid, sobbing for all her bravery, as she thought that he would surely be slain, and that after all their trouble, they were not to be allowed to enjoy the happiness of their reconciliation. I would liefer die with thee, my dear, dear lord. Let them kill us both, if it is to be. Nay, dear wife, said Geraint, I would not have thee slain. Revenge my death if they slay me. So, with many lingering kisses, he set her down upon the road, and saw her hide in the thickets. By now the gloom of evening had settled upon them, and the sound of tramping horses had rapidly approached. And painfully, by reason of his stiff wounds, Geraint dressed his armor as best he could, and laid spear in rest, and drew his shield before him, and so waited in the dark road. He heard a single knight riding before the others, and soon saw his figure issue from the gloom with couched lance. And Sir Geraint made him ready also, resolved to sell his life dearly at the last. But as they began to spur their horses, there came the voice of Enid from the hedgerow beside them, and she cried out piteously in the dark, O chieftain, whoever thou art, what renown wilt thou gain by slaying a dead man? The stranger stopped his horse and called out, O heaven, is it my lord, Sir Geraint? Yes, in truth, said Enid, and who art thou? I am the little king, said the other, and rode swiftly towards Sir Geraint. Then he leapt from his horse and came to the stirrup of his chief. My lord, he said, I learned that thou wert in trouble, and came to see if I could aid thee. And Enid ran forward with joy at hearing this, and welcomed the little king, and told him in what a hard pass was Sir Geraint. My lord and my lady, said Griffith, I thank heaven sincerely for the favour that I came to you in your need. I learned of thy fight with the trolls and of thy slaying of Earl Madoc, and that thou wert wounded. Therefore I rode on to find thee. I thank thee heartily, said Sir Geraint, and my dear wife also thanks thee. For of truth I am spent, and must needs get me rest and a leech for my wounds. Then come at once with me, said the little king, and after he'd helped Enid to her place before Geraint, he leaped on his own horse. Now thou shalt go to the hall of a son-in-law of my sister, which is near here, said King Griffith, and thou shalt have the best medical advice in the kingdom. At the hall of the baron, whose name was Tudur, and a most knightly and gentle lord, Sir Geraint and Lady Enid were received with great welcome and hospitality. Physicians were sent for, and they attended Geraint day by day until he was quite well again. The fame of his adventures began to spread along the borders of his kingdom, and at length reached his own court. And the robber lords and brigands of the marches, hearing of his deeds, ceased their evil doing and made haste to hide from his wrath. Also his father Urban and the host at his court repented of their hard thoughts and sneers concerning him, and praised the strength of his arm, the gentleness of his courtesy, and his justice and mercy. When Sir Geraint and the Lady Enid returned home, all the people gathered to welcome them, and thenceforth he reigned prosperously, and his warlike fame and splendor lasted with renown and honor and love, both to him and to the Lady Enid, from that time forth. Well, thank you so much for listening. Please like and subscribe if you haven't already, and we'll start on Chapter 7 in the next video. I love you guys. As Tigger says, ta-ta for now.